Welcome back. This is BL Stories for You. I'm an indie author dedicated to original BL storytelling. From high school drama to fantasy worlds, everything you hear is written by me. I'm so glad you're here for this journey. Let's begin.
The temple compound buzzed with excitement. What had started as a normal day of blessings had suddenly turned into the most anticipated event in Luminar. People crowded around the large stone courtyard, whispering amongst themselves as they watched the two figures standing opposite each other. On one side stood Aarhiya, the newly chosen oracle. The prince who had shocked the entire kingdom by opening the golden egg and claiming the sacred staff. On the other side stood Sonraya, the most talented young mage in Luminar. The woman everyone had once believed would become the next oracle. Nello stood off to the side with a troubled expression while chief servant Wusher stroked his beard thoughtfully. The atmosphere was tense. Very tense. Around them, countless spectators whispered. "Do you think Prince Aarhiya can actually fight?" "I don't know. He used to be terrible at magic. Maybe becoming oracle changed everything. Sonraya has been training her entire life. This will expose the truth. If he loses, everyone will know becoming oracle was just luck." The murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. In the center of the courtyard, Sonraya straightened herself. Her red robes fluttered gently in the wind. Across from her, Aarhiya stood calmly. The relaxed expression on his face irritated her even more. Aarhiya sighed. "Sonraya." His voice was calm. Almost bored. "I'll give you one last chance. Quit while you still can." The crowd immediately fell silent. Everyone stared. Had they heard correctly? Sonraya looked completely stunned. Then offended. Then furious. Aarhiya shook his head. "I'm serious." His golden eyes remained fixed on her. "You should walk away." Sonraya laughed. It wasn't a pleasant laugh. It was the kind of laugh someone made when they thought another person had completely lost their mind. "Walk away? From you?" Aarhiya nodded. "I've dueled one of the most powerful figures in the magic world." His voice became quiet. "But compared to him..." He shook his head. "You wouldn't be much of a challenge." The crowd gasped. The insult landed heavily. Sonraya's eyes widened in disbelief. For several seconds she simply stared at him. Then her face turned red. The veins in Sonraya's forehead practically popped. "You arrogant." She pointed at him furiously. "Have you completely lost your mind since returning?" People nervously stepped backward. The amount of killing intent pouring off Sonraya was becoming frightening. "I spent years training. I was the top student in the academy. I mastered spells most people can't even comprehend. And you?" She pointed directly at his chest. "You disappear for 6 months and suddenly think you're better than everyone? Better than me?" Aarhiya remained silent. That only made her angrier. Something about Aarhiya's expression felt different. He wasn't acting arrogant. He looked tired. Like someone who had already lived through things nobody around him could understand. Still, Sonraya didn't care. She took several steps forward. The magical energy around her began rising. Blue sparks crackled through the air. The crowd immediately backed away. "Listen carefully, Aarhiya." Her voice was cold. "For years, I held back because you were the crown prince. I tolerated your weakness. I tolerated your arrogance. I tolerated everyone treating you specially." She pointed at him. "But not anymore." The wind suddenly intensified. The spectators gasped. Even some temple servants looked nervous. The amount of power she was releasing was impressive. Very impressive. Aarhiya watched her quietly. No fear. No nervousness. Nothing. That expression irritated Sonraya more than anything else. She wanted him to look worried. She wanted him to understand who he was facing. Sonraya's expression twisted the moment Aarhiya's words sank in. "Quit while you still can," he had said so calmly, like it was nothing. Like she was nothing. For a second, the temple compound was silent, so silent that even the wind felt like it had stopped to listen. Then Sonraya's eyes darkened. "Don't speak to me like I'm some weak student begging for mercy," she snapped. Before anyone could react, she raised her hand. Dark red magic exploded around her like a storm breaking loose, thick, violent, almost alive. The air itself seemed to crack under the pressure. A few of the temple servants stumbled back in fear. Wusher's face changed instantly. "Stop! This is a sacred place," he shouted, stepping forward. "Sonraya! Do not oppose the oracle. The heavens have already chosen." But she didn't even look at him. "Shut up." Her voice was cold. Then she swung her arm forward. The red magic shot out like a spear, tearing through the air straight toward Aarhiya. A few people screamed. Aarhiya didn't move. He simply lifted his hand. A soft golden glow formed instantly, like sunlight gathering into a barrier. Calm. Controlled. Unshaken. The red magic slammed into it. Boom! The impact shook the entire courtyard, forcing several people to cover their faces. Dust and light burst outward, but when it cleared, Aarhiya was still standing exactly where he was. Not even pushed back. Sonraya's eyes widened slightly. Aarhiya lowered his hand. "I warned you," he said quietly. Then he struck. A golden arrow of light formed above his palm, sharp, precise, almost beautiful. It whistled through the air toward her with terrifying speed. Sonraya reacted instantly, throwing up a barrier of dark magic. But the moment the arrow hit, crack! Her shield shattered like glass. "No!" she gasped. The golden arrow pierced through and struck her shoulder. Sonraya screamed, stumbling backward as pain ripped through her body. She dropped to one knee, clutching her shoulder as blood stained her robe. The entire temple fell into stunned silence. Even the arrogant whispers from earlier were gone. Aarhiya didn't move an inch. He only watched her. Sonraya's breathing turned ragged. Rage and humiliation flashed across her face. With a sharp glare, she forced herself up again, shaking. "You think this is over?" she hissed. In a blur, she vanished. Dark magic surged under her feet as she reappeared directly behind him, aiming a brutal strike straight at his back. But Aarhiya turned slightly, just enough. His eyes flickered. "I already told you," he said under his breath. Golden light erupted outward. A powerful blast hit Sonraya mid-attack. Ah! She was thrown across the courtyard like a broken doll, crashing hard against the stone floor. Dust rose around her as she coughed violently, blood spilling from her lips. Silence. Pure, heavy silence. The temple servants, the elders, even Wusher, everyone stood frozen in disbelief. Sonraya lay on the ground, trembling as dust settled around her torn robes. The red energy she had summoned moments ago was gone now, scattered like fading smoke. Every breath she took felt heavy, painful, like her own magic had turned against her. Aarhiya stood over her, calm, almost eerily so. "Stop," he said quietly. "Before you get hurt even more." But that only made something inside Sonraya snap. Her fingers dug into the ground as she forced herself up, eyes blazing with humiliation and rage. "You," she spat, voice shaking. "Don't you dare look at me like that." Dark red energy surged again, stronger, wilder. It twisted into the shape of a massive sword in her hand, pulsing violently as the air around her grew hot and unstable. With a roar, she swung the enormous red blade down toward Aarhiya. Aarhiya didn't move away. He simply lifted his hand. A golden seal burst into existence in front of him, bright, steady, unshaken. The red blade crashed into it with a deafening sound that echoed through the temple grounds. For a split second, the two forces struggled against each other. Then, the golden seal pushed back. The sword shattered. Sonraya's eyes widened in disbelief. What? Sonraya didn't even have time to scream before she was thrown backward, crashing hard into the ground. Her body rolled once before she came to a stop, coughing violently, blood staining her lips. The entire temple fell into stunned silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Sonraya lay there, shaking, completely defeated. Aarhiya finally exhaled and looked down at her. "I told you to stop," he said, voice low but steady. "You didn't listen." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "How does it feel," he continued, "to be the one on the ground now? To be powerless?" Sonraya's fingers trembled. Her pride, her confidence, everything she had built herself on, was cracking apart in real time. Aarhiya's gaze didn't soften. "All these years," he said quietly, "you made my life feel like hell, like I had no place anywhere. Like I was nothing. Even though I was the crown prince of this kingdom, I was treated like a nobody." He paused, then crouched slightly so she could hear him clearly. "Now you know what it feels like." Sonraya's eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to glare at him. "This isn't over," she choked out. I will take my revenge. I swear it." For the first time, Aarhiya's expression shifted, just slightly tired. He straightened up. "I don't care anymore." He turned away from her, facing the silent crowd. His voice carried clearly across the entire temple compound. "As for you all, from today henceforth, I will not accept selfish wishes anymore. If your desires are only for yourself, wealth, vanity, power, obsession, you will not be answered here." A heavy silence followed. Even the wind seemed to stop. Aarhiya lowered his hand. Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked back into the temple hall. No hesitation. No second glance. Behind him, Sonraya lay trembling in humiliation as the stunned crowd slowly began to murmur, fear, disbelief, and uncertainty spreading through them like wildfire. Sonraya slammed the door of her chamber shut the moment the maid stepped inside with warm water and bandages. "Get out. I said get out," she snapped, her voice sharp with humiliation more than pain. The maids flinched and hurried out immediately, bowing as they left. One of them quietly closed the door behind her, leaving Sonraya alone in the room. Only then did the anger fully spill out. She grabbed a nearby vase and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall with a loud crack, water spilling everywhere. Her breath was uneven, her shoulder still burning from Aarhiya's attack. "This can't be happening," she muttered through clenched teeth. Outside her chamber, her father stood in the hallway, having heard everything. He didn't enter. He only let out a long, tired sigh, rubbing his forehead as if the weight of everything was suddenly too much. Sonraya had always been strong, but lately, she was becoming unpredictable. And dangerous. After a moment, he turned and walked away slowly, leaving her to her rage. Later that night, Sonraya sat alone on her bed, the room dim except for the faint glow of her healing magic still lingering around her wounds. Her eyes narrowed. Then she lifted her hand. Dark red energy flickered in her palm as she forced a connection through space itself. "Dracon," she called mentally. The world shifted. In a distant kingdom, Dracon sat in a loud bar surrounded by laughing men and clinking glasses. Music echoed through the hall. Then his expression changed slightly. A familiar voice entered his mind. He leaned back, smirking. "Well, I'm glad you still deem me worthy to notice." Sonraya's voice came through, tense and furious. "Come back to Luminar." Dracon raised a brow. "Why?" "I heard the little prince is back." He's the oracle now, right? I didn't believe it. Sonraya's jaw tightened. It's true. And he's not the same anymore. There was a pause. Dracon took a slow sip of his drink. Interesting. Her voice sharpened. Aarhiya humiliated me. If you still want me, if our agreement still means anything, then come back and deal with him. Dracon's smile widened slightly at that. And what exactly do I get if I subdue him? He asked calmly. Sonraya didn't hesitate. Me. Whatever you want. That made him chuckle softly. Still ambitious, he said. Then his tone turned a little more serious. I've got unfinished business here first. But don't worry. I'll return to Luminar. He leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. Just stay out of trouble until then. The connection faded. Sonraya lowered her hand slowly, her eyes dark and burning with determination. I'll wait, she whispered. But her expression made it clear she wasn't planning to stay patient for long. That night, Luminar was unusually quiet. The golden streets of the capital glowed softly under lantern light as the royal carriage moved past the streets. You don't look like you want to return to the palace, he finally said. Aarhiya didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted toward the distant palace towers, then away again. I can't go there tonight, he said quietly. Nello frowned. Why? Aarhiya paused. I don't want to see my father right now. That was all he said. Soon, they arrived at a familiar place. A bar tucked between two busy streets, still glowing warmly despite the late hour. The moment Aarhiya stepped in, the atmosphere shifted. The owner immediately looked up and froze for a second before breaking into a wide grin. Your Highness, no, Oracle, he exclaimed, rushing forward. You honor my place. The news spread instantly through the room. People stood, bowing respectfully, some cheering softly. Aarhiya gave a small, tired nod. Just a drink, he said simply. From a corner table, two voices suddenly rang out. Well, well. Ojello leaned back with a grin. So the oracle finally came to drink after saying he wouldn't. Char laughed. I told you he wouldn't stay away. Aarhiya glanced at them. Then he sighed. I changed my mind. He walked over and sat with them. Nello followed silently and took a seat slightly apart from the group. While the others ordered drinks, Nello didn't touch anything. He simply watched. Aarhiya, however, didn't stop. One cup. Then another. Then another. It didn't take long before Ojello frowned. Hey, slow down, he said, trying to pull the cup away. You're drinking like something died today. Char chuckled nervously. Did becoming Oracle stress you out that much? Aarhiya didn't respond. He just reached for another cup. His eyes looked distant. Too distant. Ojello leaned forward slightly. All right, seriously, what's wrong with you? Still no answer. Char turned toward Nello. You know what's going on with him? Nello hesitated. Then slowly shook his head. No. That wasn't true. But it also wasn't something he could explain. As the drinks kept coming, Ojello suddenly grinned, trying to lighten the mood. All right, this won't do. You need cheering up. Before anyone could react, he snapped his fingers. Two young women were called over from the side of the bar, smiling politely as they approached. Char laughed. Let them warm your mood a bit, Oracle. Aarhiya's expression changed instantly. The cup in his hand froze midair. Then he slammed it down. Stop. The sound echoed sharply. The girls flinched and quickly stepped back. Aarhiya's gaze turned cold. I said stop, he repeated. Ojello blinked. Whoa, relax, we were just trying. Don't do that again, Aarhiya cut in sharply. Silence fell over the table. Char scratched his head awkwardly. Since when did you become like this? You used to love women, partying, drinking. Ojello squinted at him. Are you even the same Aarhiya we grew up with? That question lingered heavily in the air. Aarhiya looked at them for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly. People change. He lowered his gaze. So should you. His voice softened slightly. Stop living recklessly. It doesn't lead anywhere good. That shut them up completely. Even Nello looked surprised. Time passed. More drinks were brought. And Aarhiya drank more than he should have. His posture slowly weakened, his voice growing quieter, his thoughts slipping further away from the present. Then suddenly. Kaenar. The name slipped out like a wound reopening. Ojello froze. What did he just say? Char frowned. Kaenar. Aarhiya's eyes were glassy now. I miss you, he murmured. Nello's expression tightened immediately. Ojello and Char stared at each other in confusion. Kaenar. Ojello repeated slowly. As in. Emperor Kaenar of Umbraeth. Char leaned in. Wait, what does Aarhiya have to do with Umbraeth as emperor? Aarhiya didn't answer. His head tilted slightly as if he was about to say more. Nello stood up abruptly. That's enough, Your Highness, he said quickly, forcing a calm tone. He's drunk. I'll take him back. Aarhiya tried to protest weakly, but Nello was already supporting him. I apologize, Nello added quickly to Ojello and Char, we should go. Ojello still looked confused, his brows furrowed. Wait, what did he mean just now? Char nodded slowly. Yeah, that didn't sound normal at all. But Nello didn't stop. He guided Aarhiya out of the bar quickly, before anything else could be said. Behind them, Ojello and Char remained seated in silence. Then Ojello muttered under his breath. Umbraeth as emperor. Char frowned. Something's not adding up. Time passed quietly in Luminar. Aarhiya slowly settled into his role as oracle. At first, it had felt like a dream, people lining up in endless queues, asking for blessings, guidance, healing. He had expected chaos, absurd requests, maybe even resistance. But after what happened with Sonraya, something shifted. No one dared to bring foolish requests anymore. They came respectfully, carefully. Some asked for healing. Some asked for harvest blessings. Some simply came to kneel and leave, as if just being in his presence was enough to ease their fears. However, Aarhiya was still curious about his mother, the descriptors, and those damned demons that caused him to flee Umbraeth. He knew demons had long been cast out, so how come they were in Umbraeth? Could it be the reason for their eternal darkness? He couldn't forget that terrifying figure that held him hostage. Who could he be? Surely, those demons were plotting something sinister in Umbraeth, and he wondered what that was. Only the temple annals could provide him with answers, so one night he approached Wusher to give him access to the place, but to his shock, Wusher refused. Aarhiya stood still for a moment, staring at Wusher like he hadn't heard him correctly. The annals are forbidden, he repeated slowly. That makes no sense. They're temple records. Wusher bowed his head slightly, hands folded in front of him. Your Highness, the annals have not been opened in many years. They are sealed for preservation and... For preservation. Aarhiya cut in, a faint edge entering his voice. Or for hiding something. The air in the corridor tightened. Wusher hesitated just a fraction too long before answering. There is nothing to hide. But Aarhiya had already seen enough people lie to recognize it. His gaze sharpened. Did my father order this? Wusher's eyes widened slightly. No. Of course not. The denial came too fast. Aarhiya exhaled slowly through his nose, trying to calm the irritation rising in him. Ever since he returned, it felt like every path that led to answers was being quietly blocked. He glanced toward the sealed doors at the far end of the temple hall, the entrance to the annals. Heavy stone doors covered in ancient markings, untouched dust clinging to their edges. Aarhiya turned away without another word, but his expression had already changed. The calm surface he usually wore in public had cracked just slightly at the edges. What Aarhiya didn't know was that Wuxia wasn't acting alone. The previous night, deep within a private chamber of the temple, Tutor Rene stood with his hands folded behind his back, speaking in a low voice. "Prince Aarhiya must not access the annals," he said. Wuxia frowned. "With respect, Tutor Rene. I have served here for decades. I have never been told to deny access to temple records. Why now?" Rene's expression didn't shift. "Because now is exactly when it matters." Wuxia looked uncomfortable. "Is this the king's order?" A pause. Then Rene nodded once. "That is all you need to know." The answer wasn't fully honest, but it was enough. And in Luminar, obedience often outweighed curiosity. That night, Aarhiya stood in the center of the royal chamber for a moment longer than necessary, his hands clenched at his sides. The air between him and King Aurelius felt heavier than usual, like something had quietly cracked and neither of them knew how to repair it. Aurelius exhaled slowly, forcing a calm expression back onto his face. "Aarhiya," he called, softer now, "don't turn this into something it isn't. You've just returned, and already you're speaking to me as though I'm your enemy." Aarhiya let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Then stop acting like one." Aurelius' jaw tightened. "You are still my son. I am your father. You will not speak to me like that." "I don't want to be like this either, father, you know how much I love and respect you." Aarhiya replied, voice quieter but sharper in meaning. "But you're leaving me no choice but to suspect you. It's like I never really knew you at all." For a brief second, something flickered across Aurelius' face, guilt, maybe, or fear, but it disappeared just as quickly. Aarhiya stepped forward slightly, his voice steady but strained. "Tell me what you're hiding. About the annals. About the decryst. About my mother. Just, stop pretending you know nothing." Aurelius turned away from him. That silence was answer enough. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled, too controlled. "There are things you are not ready to understand." Aarhiya stared at him, disbelief slowly hardening into frustration. "I already understand enough to know I'm being lied to by my own father." Aurelius' eyes sharpened. "Enough." But Aarhiya didn't stop. "If you won't tell me," he said, each word measured, "then we will remain at odds." The words hung there like a final line drawn in stone. Aurelius' expression tightened again, but he said nothing. Aarhiya lowered his gaze for a moment, as though trying to steady himself, then turned sharply and walked out of the chamber without looking back. The doors closed behind him with a dull, final sound. Aurelius remained standing alone for a long time, staring at the empty space where his son had been, his face unreadable, but his hands were trembling slightly as he slowly curled them into fists. Later, Aarhiya stood alone in his chamber later that night, unable to sleep. The palace outside was quiet, but his thoughts were not. The annals. The demons in Umbraeth, the decryst. His sealed powers. His mother. Every answer seemed to be locked behind something just out of reach. He walked to the window and looked out toward the horizon, pressing a hand lightly against his chest and whispered under his breath, almost bitterly. "What are you hiding from me, father?" Time passed in both kingdoms, but nothing truly moved forward. In Luminar, Aarhiya continued his duties as oracle and crown prince. Every day looked the same on the surface, people coming to him for blessings, temple visits, royal meetings, court appearances. And every day, he prayed for the people of Umbraeth and for Kaenar. But something subtle changed around him. The distance between him and King Aurelius grew wider with every passing day. Their conversations became shorter, more formal. Even when they spoke, it felt like there were words they both avoided, questions that hung between them but were never asked. And the annals remained sealed. Aarhiya stopped asking. Not because he forgot, but because he understood he would not receive an answer. Polar, meanwhile, threw himself completely into his work. The research facility in Umbraeth became louder, more chaotic, more intense. Magical equations, experiments, failed prototypes, everything piled up as his team worked tirelessly under his direction, but every objective ended in failure. In Umbraeth, Kaenar ruled like a storm that never settled. Rebellions were crushed without hesitation. Ministers who questioned him disappeared into dungeons or were stripped of their positions. Entire factions learned quickly that resistance no longer had negotiation, it had consequences. No one dared approach him directly anymore. Even the concubines walked carefully around his presence, afraid to even speak too loudly. They whispered behind closed doors that the emperor wasn't ruling for power anymore. He was ruling through pain. Everyone knew the truth he never said aloud. Sonraya's absence had broken something inside him. And he was using the world to carry that weight. General Gator continued his investigation into the reports of demons, but every lead ended the same way, nothing. Burned forests, strange traces of magic, eyewitness fear, but no solid proof. It was as if something had existed and then deliberately erased itself. It frustrated him more than anything. And yet, despite everything, at night, both Aarhiya and Kaenar fell into the same silence. Aarhiya would sit alone in his balcony, playing his jade flute and staring out into the dark sky of Luminar, his thoughts slipping back to moments he never meant to treasure. And far away, in Umbraeth, Kaenar would sometimes leave his palace without telling anyone, walking alone to the training valley where echoes of the past still lingered. He would stand there for a long time, unmoving, as if waiting for someone who would never return. On certain nights, without speaking to anyone, they both found themselves drawn to the same place in spirit. The barrier. A line between worlds neither of them could cross anymore. Aarhiya would stand touching the barrier. Kaenar would do the same in Umbraeth, his hand sometimes resting near the air as if he could feel something just beyond it. Neither of them knew the other was there. But somehow, both of them stayed longer than they should have. As if waiting. As if hoping. But the barrier remained unchanged. Silent. Unforgiving. And the distance between their worlds only grew heavier with time. 6 months had passed since Aarhiya's return, and Luminar had slowly grown used to this new version of their prince. That morning, King Aurelius summoned all palace maids and servants to the royal hall. The atmosphere was tense the moment they gathered. No one spoke freely. Even the sound of footsteps felt too loud. "You all know why you're here," he began. The room stayed silent. Aurelius continued, his voice steady but low. "Ever since Aarhiya returned, he has not been himself. I have noticed it. And I know you have too." A few servants exchanged uneasy glances. "I want the truth," he said firmly. "Not rumors. Not assumptions. Just what you have seen. If something is troubling him, I need to know." For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, the head maid stepped forward. "My king," she began carefully, "the prince, he has changed greatly." Aurelius' gaze sharpened slightly. "Explain." She hesitated before continuing. "He eats very little. He speaks less. Most days, he completes his duties, but it feels mechanical. As though he is only going through motions. As though he is forcing himself." A murmur passed through the hall as others nodded in agreement. Another maid stepped forward nervously. "And at night, we hear him." She swallowed. "Crying. Sometimes it is quiet, but sometimes, it is unmistakable and full of hurt." The hall grew colder with that statement. Aurelius' jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing yet. The head maid hesitated again before adding, he also speaks in his sleep. Names we do not recognize. That made Aurelius' expression shift, just slightly. Names, he repeated. Yes, your majesty, she replied. One of them was Kaenar. Silence dropped like a stone. Aurelius' face went still. Kaenar, he said slowly, almost as if testing whether he had heard correctly. Before anyone could answer, another maid quickly spoke up, almost eager now that the truth was already out. We have also seen him, she said. More than once. Near the barrier, your majesty. A wave of quiet shock moved through the hall. Aurelius didn't speak for a long moment. The words seemed to settle in his mind like something dangerous finally clicking into place. The barrier. Umbraeth. Kaenar. Aarhiya's silence. His growing distance. His pain that no one could reach. That same night, he quietly summoned Ogello and Char to a private chamber in the palace. The two friends arrived looking nervous, bowing quickly the moment they saw the king. You said you wanted to speak with us, your majesty? Ogello asked carefully. Aurelius studied them for a moment before speaking. I will be direct. Have you noticed anything unusual about Aarhiya, since his return? Ogello and Char exchanged a glance. Char scratched the back of his head. Well, yes. But we thought it was just stress. Becoming oracle and all that. Aurelius' expression remained unreadable. Be specific. A short silence followed. Then Ogello sighed. He drinks differently now. Before, it was just fun. But lately, it's like he's trying to drown something. Char nodded quickly. And he says strange things sometimes. Especially when he's drunk. Aurelius' gaze sharpened slightly. What things? The two hesitated. Then Ogello spoke more quietly. Kaenar. The name landed heavily in the room. Char added quickly, he says it more than once. Sometimes like he's talking to someone who isn't there. Aurelius' fingers tightened slightly behind his back. So it was not just the maids. Not just whispers. It was real. Later, Nello stood alone before the king. Unlike the others, he did not look nervous. He looked guarded. Aurelius studied him carefully. Tell me everything, he said firmly. Where did you go? What happened during those 6 months? And answer me honestly, did Aarhiya go anywhere near Umbraeth? Nello's expression tightened. I cannot answer that, he said simply. Aurelius' patience snapped slightly. That is not a request. It is an order from your king. For the first time, Nello's eyes flickered with frustration. Your Majesty, Nello said calmly, you may be the ruler of Luminar. But I serve only one master. A pause. Aarhiya. The room went still. Aurelius' expression hardened. Are you defying me? Nello met his gaze steadily. No. I am stating fact. Nello glanced at him, surprised but silent. Nello continued, his voice even but firm. If Aarhiya has chosen not to reveal the truth to you, then no one here has the authority to force it out of me. Aurelius' eyes narrowed. Even if I command it? Nello didn't hesitate. Even then. Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Nello lowered his gaze slightly, but his tone remained respectful. I cannot act against him. Aurelius stood very still. For a long moment, it looked like he might argue further. But in the end, he didn't. Aurelius did not sleep that night. Long after the palace had gone quiet, he remained seated alone in his private chamber, staring at maps of Luminar laid across the table, though his mind was no longer on borders or politics. It was on his son. That morning, he sent for tutor Renee in secret. Only the two of them in a dimly lit chamber far from the main hall. Renee bowed slightly. You summoned me urgently, your majesty. Aurelius did not waste time with formalities. I believe our suspicions are correct. Aarhiya crossed into Umbraeth. A pause. Then he added, quieter but more certain, and somehow, he became involved with the Dark Emperor. René went still for a moment. That is a serious conclusion, he said carefully. On what basis do you say this? Aurelius leaned forward slightly. The signs are too many to ignore. His condition. His behavior. The name Kaenar which he has been calling out secretly. The barrier sightings. His voice lowered further. Something happened there. Something he is not telling anyone. René exhaled slowly. Even if that were true, no one from Umbraeth can cross into Luminar freely. The barrier prevents it. You know that. I know what it is supposed to do, Aurelius replied sharply. But I also know what Aarhiya has already done that was never supposed to be possible. That shut René up for a moment. Aurelius stood, turning toward the window. I cannot afford to assume he is safe just because of old rules. René frowned slightly. Then what do you intend to do? Aurelius was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. The annual Cross-Kingdom Festival is in 7 days. René's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes. The gathering of all allied realms. Aurelius nodded. Every powerful kingdom will send representatives. Nobles. Royals. Potential matches. René's expression shifted. You are thinking of marriage alliances. Aurelius did not deny it. Instead, he said, the previous arrangement with Prince Dracon fell through. This time, I will ensure Aarhiya meets suitable partners there. René studied him carefully. Is that truly for his benefit, or to pull him away from whatever you believe he is attached to? You aren't even sure they were entangled romantically. They might have just been friends. Aurelius scoffed. Friends? I am not leaving anything to chance. Aurelius turned back, his expression firm now. I want him to meet a suitable match so he can move forward. A pause. René hesitated. Your Majesty, is that wise, given his current state? Aurelius' gaze hardened slightly. What is unwise is leaving him to drift like this. He is isolated. Distracted. Hurt by something I cannot yet fully see. His voice lowered. If I do nothing, I may lose him completely. René didn't respond immediately. Then, quietly, he said, you should tread with caution, your Majesty. If you push him too hard, you may lose him anyway. Aurelius looked away. The truth of that lingered in the air between them. For a while, Polar hadn't been getting enough sleep. He sat in the dim light of his study, surrounded by scattered notes, broken tools, and half-tested formulas that no longer made sense even to him. The vial containing Aarhiya's blood rested at the center of the table like a living thing, quiet, glowing faintly under the lamp as if it still carried a pulse of its own. One of the scientists had burned himself that day. Not slightly. Not accidentally. It had been a full magical backlash, skin scorched, magic circuits shattered, just from trying to step beyond the barrier using their latest experiment. And still, it wasn't enough. Kaenar's patience was running out. Everyone could feel it. Even Polar, who had once been able to read Kaenar like an open book, now felt like he was staring at something unfamiliar. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. This is impossible, he muttered to himself. There has to be a way. But there wasn't. Not one he could see. And that was what scared him the most. By midnight, Polar stood up abruptly. He grabbed his coat. There was only one other place that could give him an answer. The forest outside Umbraeth was colder than usual. Polar moved past the barrier's distant glow, heading toward a place most people avoided even speaking about, the hut of the blind seer, Widey. They said Widey didn't see the future. They said Widey saw truths people tried to bury. But she was old news. A being discarded by the heavenlies. Still, Polar hadn't been getting no other option. When Polar finally reached the small crooked hut at the edge of the dead woods, he paused. He knocked once. No answer. He knocked again. Then. Come in. The voice came from inside. Polar exhaled slowly and stepped in. Inside, Widey sat cross-legged on the floor, blindfolded, surrounded by floating shards of crystal that turned slowly in the air like orbiting moons. You've been running in circles, Widey said softly. And trying to find a way to get the Emperor through the barrier in order to save your life. Polar froze. You already know why I'm here. Widey gave a faint smile. I know. Silence stretched between them. Polar swallowed hard. Then tell me how to fix it. How do I get Kaenar through the barrier? Widey sat perfectly still as Polar spoke, her cloudy eyes fixed somewhere beyond him, like she was listening to something that wasn't in the room at all. Polar stepped forward and placed the vial carefully on the small wooden table between them. The liquid inside shimmered faintly, like sunlight trapped in water. Widey's expression changed, just slightly. Her fingers moved toward it but stopped just short. Blood, she murmured. Polar nodded. It's Sonraya's. I was hoping it could help me find a way, but I have tried for months, no results. A silence fell. Even the air felt heavier. His voice cracked slightly, and he exhaled like he had been holding everything inside for too long. Please help me, Widey, for Kaenar's sake, he continued. He's not himself anymore. Ever since Sonraya left. Widey tilted her head slowly, as if she was studying him rather than listening. Polar went on, pacing now in frustration. He's getting worse. He's ruthless in a way I've never seen before. He's hurting himself just as much as everyone else. And he stopped, swallowing hard. I can't just stand by and watch it happen. Widey remained silent. Polar turned back to her, more desperate now. You're connected to the heavens. You were a seer once. People still whisper your name like a warning and a blessing at the same time. If anyone can see a path through this, it's you. Still, Widey said nothing. That silence started to feel like pressure on Polar's chest. So I'm asking you, he said more firmly, stepping closer again. Help me. Help me fix this. Find a way to get Kaenar through the barrier. Widey smiled gently. You know who Sonraya really is. Polar froze for a moment, as if he hadn't heard her properly. His grip tightened around the small vial in his hand. What did you just say? Widey didn't move. She sat calmly in her dim hut, her milky blind eyes fixed somewhere past him, as if she could see far more than he ever could. Then she gave a soft, knowing smile. I said, she repeated slowly, that you already know the truth about Aarhiya. You know that the sun goddess Sonraya is not who she claims to be. Silence. The words hit him harder than any spell. You caused your current predicament. Widey tilted her head. If you had just minded your business and not interfered with their relationship, by causing Aarhiya to leave Umbraeth, things would have gone the way it was supposed to, but because of you, everything became even more complicated. Polar was shocked, but, he is Prince Aarhiya, he is the Prince of Luminar. How could I do nothing? I was trying to prevent a disaster, I was trying to help. But you only made matters worse. Do not interfere in people's fate. You should let them handle it by themselves. Polar's fingers trembled around the vial as he lowered his head regretfully. He swallowed hard. For a moment, the only sound was the wind brushing against the hut's cracked wooden walls. Widey slowly extended her hand, palm up. Give me the vial. Reluctantly, Polar stepped forward and placed it into her hand. The moment she touched it, she paused for a fraction of a second, like something unseen passed through her. Then she curled her fingers around it. Leave, she said simply. Polar blinked. What? Go back, Widey said. Do not interfere further. I will handle it. Come back tomorrow, and I will tell you what you are meant to do. Polar stared at her for a long moment, searching for something, clarity, reassurance, anything. But Widey's face gave nothing away. Eventually, with a heavy breath, he turned. The door creaked as he stepped out into the cold air. Behind him, Widey remained still in the dim hut. And Polar walked away, more unsettled than when he arrived. Widey sat in silence for a long moment after Polar left. The hut was strangely quiet except for the soft crackle of dying embers in the hearth. Then, slowly, she pushed herself up. Her hands moved with practiced certainty across the wooden floor, even though her eyes saw nothing. She knew every step of this place like it was carved into her bones. She walked toward a hidden section of the hut, pressed her palm against an old stone slab, and it shifted with a low grinding sound. A staircase. Cold air drifted up from below. Widey descended without hesitation. Down there, the space opened into a buried chamber, older than the hut itself. Candles lined the walls, and as she raised her hand, each one lit up one by one, responding to her presence like they recognized her. The room revealed itself fully now, circles etched into the floor, ancient symbols glowing faintly, and markings that seemed to shift whenever you tried to focus on them for too long. Widey stepped into the center circle and sat down slowly. She closed her eyes. Her lips began to move. The air changed. The candles flickered violently, and the symbols on the floor began to spin as if something vast was waking up. And then, she was no longer in the hut. She stood in a vast celestial hall. Widey could see again. Before her sat the heavenly gods on towering white thrones, their forms radiant and calm, like they were carved from light itself. The space around them felt endless, silent, and suffocating at the same time. At the center sat Mushu Li, the head of the gods. He looked at her without urgency. Without emotion. Only observation. Why have you disturbed our peace again? He asked calmly. Widey's expression tightened immediately. Peace, she snapped. What peace? You dare to have peace while leaving the world you created to rot. The hall did not react. The gods simply watched her like a story they had already read. Widey's voice rose. You all stood there when Sakador plunged Umbraeth into darkness. You did nothing when the Decrists were destroyed, when the very people you promised to protect were wiped out. Still, silence. She stepped forward, anger building. I did everything you asked of me. Every vision. Every warning. Every command. And when Sakador cursed me and stripped me of my sight in the mortal realm, you did nothing. A flicker passed through the hall. But no one spoke. And now, she continued, voice shaking with fury, now that hope has finally appeared in Umbraeth, through Aarhiya, you still do nothing. A goddess in pale robes, swailing, finally spoke softly. We cannot interfere directly in the affairs of mortals. Widey turned sharply toward her. That's your excuse for everything, she cut in. You watch. You wait. You let everything fall apart and then pretend it's balance. A heavier silence settled. Then Widey's voice dropped, but it was sharper than before. You are not protectors. You are cowards who refuse to face the consequences of your own actions. A murmur ran through the gods. Fu Ji, hot-tempered and red-eyed with fury, suddenly stood. How dare you? Enough. Mushu Li's voice cut through everything. Instantly, the hall stilled. He studied Widey for a moment longer, then spoke more carefully. What do you want? Widey exhaled, trying to calm her nerves. I want Kaenar to be able to pass through the barrier, she said firmly. I want him to meet Aarhiya. The prophecy cannot stay buried anymore. That triggered immediate chaos among the gods, voices rising, energy shifting, protests erupting all at once. But again. Mushu Li raised a hand. Silence returned. He looked at Widey for a long time before speaking. You know we are not meant to interfere in their destinies, he said slowly. Especially not in a bond like theirs. Widey didn't blink. But. A pause. Then Mushu Li finally sighed. You are not entirely wrong, he admitted. The gods turned toward him in shock. Mushu Li continued, voice heavier now. We have been silent for too long. Widey's breath caught slightly. Mushu Li lifted his hand, and a soft light formed above his palm, pulsing like a heartbeat. I cannot move Kaenar for you, he said. But I can fortify Aarhiya's blood. Fu Ji turned to Mushu Li, shock evident on his face. Mushu Li, what do you think you are doing? But Mushu Li simply raised his hands, causing Fu Ji to turn away and murmur in discontent. Widey listened closely. This will allow only 3 individuals to pass beyond the barrier using it, Mushu Li explained. But its power will last only 3 months. His gaze sharpened slightly. After that, they must return before the final day of the 3rd month, or they will be erased by the forces outside the barrier. Widey lowered her head slightly. I understand. The hall began to dissolve around her. Mushu Li's final words echoed faintly. Do not misuse this chance, Widey. Then. Everything shattered. Widey's eyes snapped open. She was back in her underground chamber. Candles flickered gently, as if nothing had happened. But in her hand. The vial of Aarhiya's blood now glowed softly. Alive. Powerful. And waiting. Thanks for watching. The next episode will be uploaded soon. Do watch out for it. Until then, like and subscribe to the channel to enjoy more episodes.